IR35, where are we now? One of the many measures announced by the government in response to the COVID-19 crisis was to delay IR35 reform in the private sector. The responsibility for determining your IR35 status was due to be transferred from you to your end client as of April 2020, but this has now been delayed until April 2021. Whilst initially welcomed, this delay presents numerous challenges for contractors and end clients alike. Private sector end clients. Despite the damning report from the House of Lords that advises against the introduction of the off-payroll reform, the government appear to have ignored the concerns raised and remain committed to rolling out the changes on the 6th of April 2021. Speaking to Parliament on the same day that the House of Lords report was issued, Jessie Norman, the Financial Secretary to the Treasury, said, "The government will introduce an amendment to the bill in due course to legislate for a new commencement date of the 6th of April 2021. The scathing report may result in some amendments, along with a review of public sector reform, but as things stand, it feels like nothing will stop the government from delivering their planned reform. It is therefore imperative that large and medium sector end clients continue to prepare for IR35 reform. It would be unwise to assume that a further delay, soft landing, or change of heart is likely. But if end clients are to be encouraged to carry on planning for the change, what does that mean for contractors? Determining IR35 status. Until the reform becomes law, you retain the legal right to determine your IR35 status where you contract in the private sector. If you work in the public sector, your end client has been responsible for determining your IR35 status since April 2017. The IR35 off-payroll reform will transfer the responsibility of determining your IR35 status from you, the contractor, to your end client. At the same time, if you are deemed to be inside IR35, the fee payer in the supply chain, the party paying your limited company, will be responsible for deducting PAYE and NI from your invoice value before making payment. The issue faced by contractors right now is how to reconcile their right to determine their own IR35 status with the end client's desire to continue with their preparations for IR35 reform. We will take a look at some of the common situations contractors are now facing. My end client has not undertaken any preparation for the reform. What should I do? Until April 2021, you were responsible for your IR35 status, so legally speaking, you don't need to do anything other than carry on trading and ensure you build your evidence file to support your IR35 position. Your end client should be encouraged to seek advice as soon as possible with regard to planning for April 2021, and you should work with them to make sure they understand how you operate and what both parties can do to ensure a fair IR35 assessment is reached. My end client decided to stop engaging with limited company contractors so as to avoid IR35 reform. What should I do? A lot of high-profile end clients made policy decisions not to engage with limited contractors. Ultimately, this is their business decision and risk. You should contact your client and discuss the updated situation with them. Some end clients have come under huge commercial pressure to reconsider their approach, but others are holding fast and are not prepared to undo the work they have done to date. My end client determined my contract to be inside IR35. Can I ignore this? Your end client is not legally responsible for IR35 until April 2021, but in the meantime, it may not be as simple as you ignoring their opinion. If your end client has assessed the role on an individual basis using reasonable care, it is not unreasonable to assume that this could be used by HMRC in the event of an investigation. Whilst it is true that their determination is not legally binding at this point and is subject to challenge, it shows that your end client believes that this engagement is inside IR35. Simply disregarding this would be unwise. Some end clients, as we said, have made policy decisions to only engage contractors through PAYE solutions. They may no longer want to work with your limited company. If you had already accepted the inside IR35 position and have begun to engage through a new model, PAYE or umbrella employment for instance, you would need to talk to your end client. To revert back to using your limited company will require contracts being terminated and reissued. Choosing to ignore your end client's assessment can also place them in a difficult position. What are they to do if they suspect that their contractors may not be properly applying the existing IR35 rules? With no specific guidance as to how to deal with this situation, end clients are advised to remind their contractors of their legal obligations under IR35, including the need to ensure that they are fully compliant with all tax legislation and that they pay their taxes when due. Such an approach will also support end clients in demonstrating that they have reasonable procedures in place to prevent the facilitation of tax evasion as required under corporate criminal tax offences introduced in the Criminal Finances Act 2017. Is it a risk to revert back to outside IR35? Given your end client deemed your contract to be inside IR35, reverting back to outside will carry a level of risk. Remember that if HMRC choose to investigate your IR35 status, they can seek assurances from your end client. It is possible that your client could stand by the factors they have taken into account in their original decision if asked questions by HMRC in an IR35 investigation, and this may not help you. It would be a good idea to discuss their reasons for your inside IR35 assessment to see if you can come to an agreement. If you do decide to revert back to outside IR35, we recommend you have a professional review of your contract and you ensure you can evidence your position. Where contractors are in fact inside IR35, we encourage them to not take risks and operate a deemed payment or consider alternative arrangements like a compliant umbrella or PAYE option. My end client found me outside IR35, so I don't need to worry, right? If you believe the outside determination to be correct, then the statement issued by your end client may provide important evidence in supporting your status as a genuine contractor, but you should still make sure you understand their reasoning and that the decision is based on factually correct information. If you disagree with their decision, you should be honest and discuss the assessment. You are at risk if you knowingly trade outside IR35 when you are in reality inside, and HMRC would seek to prove a deliberate act of tax avoidance if they investigated. Importantly, your end client also needs to understand why you don't agree, so they can consider their approach and understand why they arrived at a different answer. My end client is insisting on determining my IR35 status. Do I have to accept this? End client assessments will have no legal bearing before the 6th of April 2021, but some companies may decide to continue with the process they have already started. They may have spent time establishing indicative status assessments for certain roles and may have set recruitment and procurement policies on that basis. You may find your end client is only prepared to engage for a particular role on an inside basis. So whilst the delay was applauded by many, it came a little too late for others. In a perverse twist, it is probably the least prepared end clients that have gained the most from the delay, with additional time to implement change and reflect on the experience of others. Contractors now face a confused market where it may not be possible for them to exercise their legal rights and obligations if their end client is not for undoing the work they undertook for April 2020. What is certain is that as contractors seek new assignments and we emerge from the current COVID-19 crisis, IR35 has not gone away, it cannot be ignored, and more than ever it is important to make sure you understand and can evidence your IR35 status. To find out more about how Orange Genie can support you, call us on 01296 468 483 or email us at info@orangegenie.com.